and welcome everyone to Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Anita Joshi, and with that, would like to formally introduce our guest for today, Dr. Anita Chu, who is a PharmD and the board member and chapter president of AWIS. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Nina. It's always great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Well, to maybe kick things off, would love if you could just, formally introduce yourself and share a little bit of a background on you.
Oh, okay. So I have been in healthcare for over 20 years. I think looking back on it, as I was trying to prepare for this talk, I think I've always been gravitated towards science and technology. And throughout the 20 years, I actually have been, seeking different opportunities professionally to be able to contribute more to those two factors so that could bridge it together and then create more of a greater impact for patients. So really, I started in my early days in community pharmacy at a really large retail pharmacy, really taking in their technology, really taking in how they operate, process, and all of those things to understand how healthcare is delivered in the community setting, because it really in a community setting is really a great chance for people to be able to ask their questions and get those types of subject matter expert, teas that you probably won't get from your doctor as much because you don't have enough time. And I practice my clinical practice. I did my residency at the VA, where I learned, large data and large healthcare systems with, lead pioneer in EHR, and also later on at a large healthcare system in San Diego to practice as well. And then opportunities kind of came as I was doing more tech and healthcare related projects to pivot into biotech and pharma. And so I was formerly with BioMarin. I was the infrastructure lead. I led operations and also medical affairs innovations. I was on the end of basically bridging science and also technology, integrating data into translating our scientific content, where you can make good decision making with visuals and dashboards, and then also encompassing other different technologies across the collaborative different ends to make sure that we're able to deliver our content in that sense. And then now I'm actually a board member and chapter president for Association for Women in Science. So I think it has to do with a lot of maybe being a minority female, Asian, all the above. I think deep down inside, even though I love the science and the passion for bridging healthcare as well, there is that part of me where I still feel like we need to do a little bit more for women in STEM. So through the association itself, it is really honest work for nonprofit and be able to really go out there and champion for women to continue to represent, because we're still very underrepresented in this field, and then to keep up with my interest for technology and healthcare. I also am a startup advisor for healthcare tech as well in my discretionary time. So really in the what I see in this last 20 years and how I'm seeing where I'm going to be headed is that I want to be able to contribute more using my experiences and my background especially with our technology transformation and how we can actually build a better future for healthcare.
That's incredible. And already just having that wealth of experience of industry and pharma and startup with startup environment with your advisorship, and now also as the board member and president, like that, I could just definitely see how there's probably so much synergy and you're really able to leverage your past experiences because you know what it's like to be in these spaces. That's absolutely incredible. I want to dive into each of the things that you mentioned because I'm just so curious. Maybe starting with your role as kind of an advisor, would love if you could share a little bit more about what that looks like, since you are really in kind of the thick of innovation and transformation. What are you kind of seeing on the ground level, so to speak?
Yeah. So in addition to doing it for So a lot of the different advisory things that I've kind of come about is really leveraging my background, right? So
Mm.
pharmacogenomics is a very hot topic and precision medicine. So did a little bit of that. And so I can't dive into too much details because I'm on kind of an NDA with you know,
Absolutely.
so but the journey has been great. Like, you know, like I said, I finally had come to the point in my career where I have, you know, the privilege to have a very wonderful career journey, to be able to take in so much experiences. And now it's the time where I'm giving back and to be able to advise these companies. So I mentioned, you know, pharmacogenomics. There is a lot of companies right now that are working on the tough process of transition of care, especially when it comes to medication therapy management, where you get the patient kind of lost once you go from one section of the healthcare process to another, you know, and as they go through, like, let's say they're coming out of, like, you know, discharge, going back home, or they're going to an LTC facility. A lot of those things kind of get lost when the, you know, the systems or the data don't actually communicate with one another. So there is really a lot of great companies out there that are seeing the need, now kind of seeking advice from like practitioners like myself, being patient advocate, to be able to bring those products and really try to create a solution for that. Other things I'm kind of looking at too that I'm helping with is also workflow processes as well, right? As you think about like the transition of care in terms of patient going from one journey to another, and a lot of companies kind of focus on the holistic kind of approach, right? A lot of the other companies too are also honing in on those smaller scale pieces of it, because I think, you know, as I'm advising, you're hearing that there is so many different things and so many different solutions that you can create in the healthcare world,
Mhm.
that nobody really can do it all. And we're really at that, you know, really at that stage right now where everybody is looking into partnerships and looking into say, hey, we can't play silo anymore. We're going to be able to, you know, get some advantage of people's like expertise, and here's what I bring to the table, and then kind of come together for a greater solution.
That is absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, just thinking of all of the different nuances that you're seeing, just as so many people are trying to impact this big ecosystem. I mean, I could just imagine that sounds so fulfilling to be on that side of it and leverage your knowledge and like lived experiences.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
And I'll now kind of really want to talk about the work that you do for the Association for Women in Science. I would love if you could share a little bit more, maybe for those that aren't aware of the organization, you know, what types of initiatives do you kind of spearhead to really support women in STEM? What does that kind of look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so actually the Association for Women in Science has been around for over half of a century. So we just celebrate 52 years in our drive to drive excellence in STEM. And the whole mission really is to basically create a platform so that women of STEM can achieve full equity and full participation across all STEM disciplines. So we have over 30 plus grassroots chapters, and, you know, combined membership wise is over 100,000 worldwide, just for networking, communication, support, and all of those great things. So the Palo Alto chapter, which I am a president of, actually has been around for, in 2020, we celebrate 35. So we're actually close to 40 years now. So it's been a
Wow.
very long-standing chapter in the community itself. So I would say actually, you know, being in this position, I have large shoes to fill, because all of
Hmm.
the pioneer women that have been fighting for STEM have been doing this since the 70s. And so, you know, that's a long way, right? Like, you know, I
Absolutely.
still feel that coming into it in 2023 time, thinking about how much we have achieved, although we have achieved quite a bit for women in STEM, but there is still a long way to go. There are still a lot of things that we're still trying to, you know, advocate and fight for. So on a national level, that's what AWIS does. So
Mhm.
we're always actively involved with, you know, Congress, United Nations, across
Wow.
different pharma industries and biotech companies, to be able to advise on how to build better companies, how to be more inclusive, how to actually, you know, address the gender bias, all of those things that are still, you know, very timely and important, and in order to sustain a very equitable, you know, working environment for women in STEM. So really, like, for example, our CEO was actually part of the signing last year when the Biden administration signed into Act for the Chips and Science Act. She was there to really be sharing our voice and on a national level to support women on how we can actually be a lot more inclusive. So the act itself, it's actually supporting domestic semiconductor manufacturing, science, education, research. The aim is really to increase women and underrepresented minorities in STEM fields, to prevent sexual harassment. There's a lot more, but those are the things that AWIS actually does on a national level to be able to be that voice so that we can see it, from top down and be able to be a part of that, right? But at a regional level too, for Palo Alto, and I'm not saying this trying to be biased, but because of the fact that we are actually located in Northern California, the richness of the technology hub, the research hub, the institutions, the universities, and all of those things that are here really makes the chapter itself very unique in comparison to other chapters across the nation, because that's how we are able to continue to attract high caliber members into our association and be able to continue the mission that we're trying to do and be able to create an equitable platform for all women that is across STEM. So really, I think as I continue to take on my role, that's what I fully would be seeing, and obviously trying to at a regional level seek out more partnerships so that there's a lot more visibilities for my members to be able to network and have better opportunities, really.
Absolutely. That is so incredible. And I could tell already from you're so purpose driven. I think just personally, I can kind of get that energy. I'm so curious when it comes to, this position, was this something that you kind of always knew that you really wanted to, influence women in STEM in this particular capacity? Was this opportunity as, chapter president, was it something that was you kind of fell into? Would love if you could share kind of how you got to kind of be in this really incredible role that, you find so much passion and purpose in.
Yeah. I think it has a lot to do with my personal, upbringing as well. I actually grew up in a non-English speaking family. So when I decided that I wanted to go into pharmacy, it was kind of it was my network of being able to have that kind of support, and kind of funny because I influenced my sister to go into health as well. So she's actually a very successful nurse practitioner. But all throughout of that, in pharmacy school or through undergraduate, through that apprenticeship, the support of one another is actually really gold when you actually think about it, because within that nurturing kind of phase, you actually can go to your next classman to ask for advice. Your advisors are all there. But when I actually left practice in the pharmacy world, I began to enter into pharma, corporate America. That became very evident that what I was used to with that type of network or platform where you can actually rely on folks that were doing the same thing to get advice and things like that was really no longer there. And that's actually when I found AWIS, right? And the Palo Alto chapter. So I just started off with being a board member, learning really the chapter and learning how actually the organization serves the community. And I actually just stepped into this president role, this past summer. And it has been really wonderful to be able to do really my best to serve the community and to our constituents to see what else we can do, because a lot of us are still waiting for those moments to have more opportunities, basically.
Absolutely. And just from I feel like the one word that I can really use to describe you is just mentor, the work that you're doing with this, as well as an advisor, and just all of these years of experience that you're now able to kind of give forward in this kind of mentor role. Are there any, particular advice or guidance that you're giving to maybe early career professional women in STEM that are now kind of entering the workforce and, like you mentioned, are maybe not really seeing that community, those that supportive system that they may be used to in other avenues.
Yeah. So I think it's tough, right? So everybody that comes out of school and obviously you have done such great work in order to even position yourself to even get started in this field, right? So you've done all your, your required education. I would say the first advice for someone starting out is don't be so hard on yourself. You have come a long way to get to where you're at. And then the other thing is like, you're probably not going to be getting the first job all right, and you're going to land in the perfect place and the perfect time. But as long as you are actually able to set your goals on what you want to do and how you're going to go about it, and then, once you get into those positions, again, right, like I told you from the very get-go, networking, building that type of organization. And it's not really like networking to say, hey, I want another job, or I want to do this, I want to do that. I think that the networking process and the outreach has to be coming, deep down, like, hey, I want to be part of something better. I want to be part of something where I can learn a little bit more. And should that, opportunity come in the future where you're able to say, hey, I know so-and-so that's doing this. This is actually what I have evolved my career, and I want to be able to do that. You have now built a very, very significant relationship with that person or persons that will be able to, empower you, advocate for you to go there, right? And we know that success for, someone in a career is not just through mentorship. There's also the actual sponsorship aspect of it. The sponsorship aspect of it is someone that is, promoting you while you're not in the room. And those have to be done, you have to put in your time and the effort in order to build those kind of relationships. So those were kind of the advice I would say, like, to a person starting out. Just go and believe yourself. You're confident enough to do this, but also network.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love the delineation between kind of the need for sponsorship as well as mentorship as in conjunction for someone that maybe, is kind of fresh and starting off in the workforce. What are some, networking opportunities? Of course, there's AWIS, which is, a great place to do networking. But for you, are there any other particular avenues or places to try, any advice when it comes to how do you even go about networking, in the year 2023 where things are a little bit crazy too?
Well, it's crazy because there's a lot of options, right? And so I would say don't go and join everything, right? So like focus on what your specialties are. So like other than being a clinician myself, so those things have changed too over the course of 20 years. So when I was practicing, I was members for pharmacy organizations and things like that kind of more more aligned with my clinical practice, and you have more shared thoughts and communication and that. But then when I pivoted into like pharma and biotech, that's different. It depends on what you do in biotech, and for me I was in medical affairs, so you kind of lean in on like, oh, okay, so there's medical affairs associations that you're going to do, and those people will actually speak the same kind of language. They're looking for the same type of future solutions and those things like that, so you can actually learn, gain concepts and knowledge, and then be able to take back to your organization and then share, and then hopefully innovate from that point on, right? And then for me, I also was part of ISMAP, which is like a publication membership, because I innovate content development using technology. So you kind of want to see what your stakeholders are looking for when you're actually bringing in technology to help alleviate some of the administrative processes, or just some of those like really heavy duty labor intensive work that is involved with creating publications. So I would say really just kind of hone in on your organization. Of course, like if you're general STEM, come join us at AWIS. We're always welcome folks that are across different disciplines. So that would be my 2 cents.
I love that. And I love kind of your take on the intentionality. I think sometimes when you're starting off, there's this need to just accumulate and gather and which is, I think, has its purpose, but that thoughtful intention, I think, is also so valuable because you're really able to foster those connections and just dive in a little bit deeper. That's amazing. And I know also, when you're not doing all of these other amazing things, I know that you're also the co-founder of the Asian Employee Resource Group. Would love if you could share a little bit more about that. What kind of sparked you and your co-founder to create this group, and kind of what are some of the initiatives that you all have been working on?
Yeah, so the Asian group that we actually fostered, that was at Marin. So unfortunately, I'm no longer a part of that group anymore because I am no longer with the company. But really, the whole reason behind it was, quite frankly, on all honesty, we were not seeing representation, not at least across, all diverse groups across the company. And so myself and my co-founders, we really just needed to be able to be brave and go out there and create a safe platform, really, like to empower discussions that, are important in our related ethnic background. And also really be able to have like an opportunity to be able to interact with leadership to let them know, what we bring to the table, and what would be, something that you would like to also hear from us in order to have equal consideration for promotion, professional growth. Sometimes like it's good to be a minority person where you kind of just put your head down and do your work and things like that. But a lot of the times, and I think, decades of histories have told us that if you don't speak up and you don't advocate for yourself, it is quite difficult to get that recognition. Of course, you have to be prepared when that time comes, when someone is going to say, "Hey, we're ready to talk to your group. What do you bring?" Right? And that takes tremendous effort and bravery. So really, that was the mission. That was very mission driven to say this is what we wanted to do and how we're going to represent, the Asian minority in our company. And then so in our first year, it was a success, like because we never had anything similar. And so we were able to recruit a large amount of members, and then also be able to pilot a mentorship program that that foster that collaboration and all those mission driven things, that objectives that we were looking for. And the response from the leadership that were actually mentoring the mentees, they actually felt, wow, the reverse mentorship was actually fantastic, because they were, looking up here, and then when they were able to level with, constituents from their company, they were able to actually learn new things, and that fostered a lot of different ideas that came out of it. And programs were, in discussions on how to actually, promote diversity and growth, right? Because you want to hire talent, but you also want to be able to retain the talent.
100%. And that's actually a great segue, because I was so curious. I think, a lot of what's talked about when it comes to, being able to foster diversity is really on the part of the individual, right? So for me, it's really about these kind of creating these opportunities. But I'm so curious, since you are also a leader, how can organizations and other educational institutions that kind of are in this position of power and influence help kind of also support and are there any particular strategies or building blocks in place for people that really want to, foster this diversity, especially when it comes to women in STEM?
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of it, right? Like, one, you have to be able to get your voice out there to establish that, hey, there should be this awareness, right? That we're probably not equally represented across. And once you have that, that warm kind of conversation, right? You're not going to go into your CEO's office and barge in and say all that stuff. But once you have established, right? And a lot of the companies out there nowadays, because of, George Floyd and all that other stuff, they have been very much so, working towards this ambition. But a lot of it is kind of slow to go, right? Because you have to be able to hire the right people to actually foster the culture, and you have to have the right folks that are in your company that is also doing that. So what I would say is, once you hire the folks, right, you need to be able to the company itself be able to provide like programs that are actually going to be inclusive for diversity growth. And what do I mean by that? And that means like you probably have like opportunities for getting a higher education or, other things like that. Maybe you needed to, specialize your team in certain, digital innovation or what have you, those little buzzwords and different programs. You bring that into your company and be able to allow your folks to say, hey, this is where we're headed and this is where we are going to be recruiting. And then folks can feel like, oh, hey, this is great because the leadership itself is actually hearing, not only are they hearing us, they're actually providing opportunities for us to participate, in terms of programs, in terms of outreach, in terms of communication, all of those great things. Provide different network opportunities, right? Like, if it means like you're going to be formalizing, different networking groups within your community of,
Totally.
company so that people can actually talk to each other. When I was at BioMarin, when we were looking at the Asian resource group, we were actually looking at like monthly seminars that you would actually bring in
Great.
different folks that have that kind of specialty.
Mhm.
And then, so they would then talk, but then it would be like, half speaking about their journey experience, but networking on how to actually get to, that level that they are. Because a lot of folks are, they're curious, right? Like they want to be able to do things, but how do you actually do that within the company with if you have like, no way of being able to access those folks. So you have to be able to provide a platform, to be able to bring those kind of communications together. So those are some of the ideas. But I think a lot of it has to be driven from up top and in
Mhm.
order to drive success.
100%. And I love how you're really speaking of opportunities to not just foster networking, but also learning opportunities and growth in that aspect as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important to actually always stay on top of continuing education.
Mm,
It's the only way to be ready, right, when that opportunity comes to you.
absolutely. I love that. And we have a question from the audience that I wanted to make sure that we get to. I know we have about a minute left, but the question reads, what is your advice for women of minorities who want to become a leader in the healthcare landscape? The $1 million question.
Yes, I think that's a really great question. So I think, when you're ready in healthcare, I think I've mentioned a lot of this stuff, and it really is like a very individual kind of thing, right? So,
Mhm.
some folks are a little bit more introverted, a little bit more extroverted. I would say still be your best personal advocate. Like, if anything that I have learned in 20 years is that if you don't actually advocate for yourself, you can't advocate for other folks, right? Because you never know what you're going to be able to bring about. So, for me, I started off like, just thinking, oh, hey, I'll just join organizations to get the networking that I want. But eventually, that led to much more in a position for a board position, to being the chapter president. That at that level, you're able to do more, contribute to other people that are also in need for you. You can make those connections for folks. So I would say work on what you want to do to advocate yourself. Don't be, shy and scared, because you never know. You will get some,
Mm.
pushback, because there will be some folks that are not going to, help you. But in that event that you do have someone that will help you, that will open so many doors for you and also other folks that you're going to also help along the way.
I love that. I read this, I think it's more of a common saying of, the worst thing someone can say is just no. So that's something that I have to tell myself because, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes,
Yeah.
put yourself out there, but I have to remind myself the worst case, they say no, or they ghost me. Either of those options, I'm okay with that. So
Yeah, and you learn to be able to thick skin, and then if they say no, that's fine, you just move on to another person, and
that's amazing. Dr. Nita, I definitely want to have like a part two where you just kind of give us like just good at, how do you advocate for yourself? What are some of the cheat sheets that you can do to just start this career, development and growth? We definitely need to pick your brain more about that.
yeah. No, I mean, like the road in healthcare and life sciences is a very long journey.
Mhm.
Everybody dedicates so much time and effort into their success journey. But along the way, you have to also think about there will be breaks and times where women have to take some time to, have children. I have two children.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then there will be time where you actually in order to continue success and advocating, you also have to start early. So like I advocate for my children to learn science and to kind of preserve that lifeline, right? Because really, if you think about it, and I'll just throw some numbers out there, I said underrepresentation, gender bias, work-life biases, those are all like, obstacles that we face as STEM women professionals that are trying to succeed in this world. Just to give numbers, like the National Science Foundation last year, or actually this early year, did a quick survey on the the number of workforce employees, and it was like 146 million people between the ages of 18 and 74. They found that only really 29% of that group was men that was working in STEM, and then 18% of the women were actually working in STEM. So we're still lagging, right? Because we don't actually have those institutional support from companies to say, hey, we value all the things that you do, and we have now built in programs that are going to help with all of this stuff, so that you don't have to be forced after you have a child to take yourself out of the workforce and continue to contribute.
Absolutely. That's a crazy stat. My mind is still reeling from that one. But I wholeheartedly agree. I think there's so much work that's to be done. And I think you're kind of really mentioning just a paradigm shift that I think needs to happen with how we view, women in STEM and women in the workforce. I love that. Well, I just realized that we're over. Thank you so much, Dr. Anita, for an amazing conversation. We could just keep talking and talking. We'll definitely need to have you back. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you so much, Nina. Thank you, HITLAB. It's been a wonderful conversation.